everything was maxed out. It was just like maximum love hearts for all the shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just
maximum love
like
hearts for speed.
you know, I don't know what the number is, but it was just, I'd never seen it like that. And the DMs were just like, you know what I mean? I was like, this is what it's like to have like Post Malone's phone. You know what I mean? Just crazy, like just constantly going.
I got a need for speed. I got a need for speed.
We're used to doing this.
Okay, that's fair. Well, I'm getting a little behind the scenes, and I haven't even asked you one of my questions yet. Awesome. Well, without further ado, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. I am super excited to be welcoming back a podcast guest from season 1 and a new guest as well. So we got Jem and Josh from Australia's Speed. So thank you guys for coming on the show with me today.
Thank you, Spencer. Thanks for having us back.
Yeah,
it's good to see you again, bro.
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely is. And, you know, we've been trying to set this up for a while because I think the idea came right when I guess you guys started to play some shows and then another lockdown got introduced. And then, you know, just literally like recording this episode on different days because of the time difference between the two of us has proven to be a lot more difficult than, you know, than it normally is. But, you know, we're here. Everything's recording. We're all good. We got some bevs, and I'm really excited to be talking not only with Jem, with you again, but with Josh as well, because I think I've been a big fan of your guys' podcast and what you guys have to say. So I'm glad to, you know, not return the favor, but being able to, you know, open up the conversation on our end as well. So.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Absolutely. So before we get into any of the music chats, you know, Jem, you're no stranger to this. We got to check some bevs before we get into the music. So, Josh, because you're new here on the show, how about you go first?
Well, we are at Jem's place at the moment, and it's just after 9 a.m. on a Monday morning. So we're drinking coffee. Jem said it's from Papua New Guinea. He made me a little espresso when I popped up.
Yeah, there's a roaster down here, based in Melbourne called Proud Mary's, and I just get bags of beans from them every month or so. So he just had a set from Papua New Guinea. I had this one from my one from Costa Rica. I can't remember what the name is, but some good coffee.
Yeah, the Papua New Guinea one was nice, man.
Yeah.
We were both saying I don't think we've ever had coffee from Papua New Guinea before.
Yeah, I can't say that I've had the privilege either. So I'm feeling some FOMO with that bev check.
Dude, it's nice. I don't know. Specialty coffee is a real like big thing in Australia, especially like Melbourne and Sydney. There's a ton of roasters. So
yeah,
every time I come to Jem's, there's always got something crazy.
It's something I didn't realize until I left Australia that Australia has super good coffee culture. Like we actually get really, really good coffee here.
Right, totally.
But I didn't realize that until I went to Europe. I was in like Europe and like Italy and Germany, being like, oh, the coffee is going to be sick here. It's going to be so good. It's going to be the best because it's from Europe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized.
Oh, and you were disappointed.
It was just definitely not as available. The culture was a little bit different.
I got you.
Yeah. It's good.
Because I remember the last time you came on the podcast, Jem, like I think you were drinking drip coffee as well. But I can't, I can't. The origin point as far as New Guinea or whatever is unknown.
It probably would have been, bro, because with the time difference, we're always doing this chat in the morning, and I gotta wake up.
Yeah, I was very tempted to drink something coffee related as well, because it's around 3, just after 3 p.m. Calgary time at this point. But I've had my morning coffee and then I've had my like second coffee, so I'm just I've done the dance of drinking 3 coffees in a row and like actually having caffeine anxiety. So I'm like, this is gonna seem a bit ironic with my bev check because I have a Red Bull here. So it's like, but to be fair,
you wouldn't want to over caffeinate, dude. So just have a Red Bull.
Yeah, very ironic. But I do have one of my favorite sparkling waters as well, which is a brand called Aha. So it's a lime watermelon.
Nice.
So to be fair, I'm drinking this first and then the Red Bull. So
Yeah, nice.
it's been a tradition, not a tradition, but I've seen a lot of guests who come on the show who I say bring a bev and they're so excited that they bring 2, 3, or sometimes 4 even. So I'm like, man, sometimes I want multiple beverages. So, here we are. So we're gonna crack this.
Delicious.
Get a little bit of suds on the laptop, and cheers to you guys. Really stoked to have you on the podcast.
Thank you again.
So, it's always funny because I try to make it a standing thing for any new guests to come here on the podcast to kind of tell a little bit of their origin story as far as hardcore and playing in bands. So, Jem, since we've already hit that on your episode, and anyone who wants to listen can go back and listen to that one. But Josh, since you're new around these parts, how about you tell me some of the formative moments for you when it came to playing in bands, guitar music, breakdowns, however you want to spin that.
Yeah. Well, I guess, my story is probably pretty similar to Jem's. I mean, Jem and I have known each other since we were like 13 years old. And I guess the bridge for me meeting Jem and a lot of his friends when I was super young was a friend of mine called Ed, who plays in a Sydney hardcore band called Controlled. He was like just a really early sort of friend of mine that I went to primary school with. Mm-hmm. And he sort of put me onto hardcore because all of those guys went to high school together, and they were all sort of discovering hardcore around the same time, getting into metalcore, different sorts of things. And so I kind of met all of his friends, and by that got exposed to hardcore. Started going to local shows. They were going to just like youth center shows, catching like local metalcore bands, which at the time had a huge bleed over into the hardcore scene as well. Because at that age, this is sort of like mid 2000s. Hardcore just had this massive all ages scene in Australia because basically Parkway Drive, huge metalcore band, they started to blow up around that time, and they're essentially just hardcore kids playing metalcore, right? Mm-hmm. So they would go on tour, and they'd be playing rooms to a couple of hundred people, and all of the bands that they would take on tour with them were hardcore bands. So naturally, we kind of just got exposed to the sound through that, and then found that we kind of preferred the hardcore sound to the metalcore sound after a little while, and started our own bands. Me and Ed started like a melodic hardcore band. We were like 15, played a bunch of local shows. That was kind of our first like live experience. And then got a little bit older, started to mess around with a few more things, started more bands. Jem started Endless Heights. I started a band called Legions, which was just like a NYHC sort of worship band.
Sure.
And that was kind of the jumping off point. That was the first band that we did where we put music out, played interstate, that really sort of had a go of it. And that sort of carried into early adulthood as well. Like we all sort of finished school and started playing as much as we could. Heaps of bands from the US were coming over. We'd do support shows and stuff like that. And that's kind of just taken us up to today. Like we've thrown a lot into those bands, and then gotten to the point where, I don't know, we're pretty confident with the whole process of being in a band. So we started Speed 2 years ago, and that's kind of just taken off, and that's become our new thing that we focus most of our energy into.
Yeah.
And it's kind of brought us here.
Yeah. And I was listening back to Jem and I's first podcast today to, make sure I wasn't asking, similar questions or things like that. And I think it was just my not Australian, ignorance of just being outside of that, where it's like, I always loved Parkway Drive growing up. I'm like, maybe people in that scene are just like, oh, like we don't want to only be known for Parkway and the things like that. But then talking with Jem and even you just telling a little bit about your origin story, it's like so clear on how that band and what they did in their early days of like really putting Australia on the map, and like you said, like bringing the two waves of hardcore and metal kids under one roof for like a Parkway show. Yeah. And then like you said, like some people might just go to the metalcore show, some people might just go to hardcore, but at least, it's kind of like the it's like that Arnold Schwarzenegger like bicep meme where it's like the two hands holding. It's like 100%. Hardcore kids, metalcore kids, Parkway show.
Well, also I think like the structure of metalcore is obviously so much bigger and has a lot more appeal to younger people. So like I think there's very few people under the age of 30 into hardcore today that didn't get into it via metalcore. You know, metalcore's kind of
1,000% agree.
The gateway. Yeah. And you know, there's no sort of like negative sentiment around that.
No, especially in Australia.
Like
especially in Australia.
Yeah, like it's something that, you know,
yeah,
ubiquitous. Everybody listened to Parkway like they were the biggest band.
Yeah, I think if you dial the calendar back even just a couple years, I think a lot of people were almost like Rise Records like closet fans in a way, but they're like, there's no way I'm going to say that when I'm wearing a Madball t-shirt at the hardcore show.
Yeah.
But now seeing like such a broad spectrum of like, hey, you can listen to Momentum and CU Space Cowboy like in the same day, and those bands like have played shows together. So I think it is like you know, like Jem and I talked on his first podcast of like the no rules aspect of like hardcore, and I think that there's a ongoing push against like a quote unquote social norm when it comes to what it means to be a hardcore kid nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, the scene that we grew up in was a little bit restrictive. You know, it kind of put this sort of idea of like what a real hardcore kid is onto you, and that's just changed so much now. Like there really isn't room for that anymore because there just isn't enough people in Australia. You know what I mean? Like we embrace everybody because regardless of like, you know, how you got into hardcore, if you're into it, that's super exciting to us. And, you know, that's something that we want to kind of nurture. So yeah, we have no sort of judgments of how people get into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And yeah, I think you know, going back a little bit to the Parkway stuff, I think that there is some clear stuff where what that band did, you guys seem to be carrying out a similar like waving the Australia flag as much as you can, like through speed and forge ahead. But before we get into some of those things, I want to fast forward a little bit to maybe in the last couple of months, or even the last, you know, since Jem and I talked last, like as far as things in the speed camp, because I think at the time when Jem and I talked, you guys had just signed Flat Spot, just put out the Flexi, but I think a super monumentous chapter in the speed story is the We See You music video. So you know, before we break into the video and kind of like the craziness of that going kind of viral in some cases, can you just give context around the song and how it actually came to be, as far as like being on the This Is Australian Hardcore comp and all those things, and why you wrote that song how you did?
So our friends over here released the second volume of This Is Australia Hardcore compilation. The very first one had like 5 bands on it. It was like 50 lines. Parkway, Blackout,
No Apologies.
Yeah, just Australian hardcore bands. And the idea of it was to do a 1-minute song, and it was released on 7-inch. And so we did that again. And this had 10 bands from Australia, or nine bands, I think, this time. And so everyone had this challenge of writing a 1-minute hardcore song. So essentially, I guess that's the reason why We See is that length. And going into it, it was just kind of, how can we fit as much stuff into one song as possible in 1 minute? And then I guess before kind of shooting We See You, I had this perspective that hardcore bands don't really do music videos. I had this kind of belief that like a hardcore music video is just a live set. And so I never ever had an intention ever to do music videos ever.
Interesting. Okay.
It was something that just didn't fit into my mind in the process of, you know, I guess the artistic direction of a band, if you're going to call it that way.
Sure.
But when that song was finished in the studio and we got the master back, I just saw a video straight in my mind straight away. And it was essentially exactly just what the We See video was.
Right.
I don't know why. I think it was maybe because the song is like quite fast and has a lot of moving parts. And because of that kind of dynamic, it sparks some kind of visual reference in my mind. And so yeah, we shot a video for it. And it was pretty much exactly as the video appears. Which is super lucky because we've never done anything like that before, and I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to come out, but the bloke we worked with, our homie Jack Rudder, he's a legend, super talented, an amazing guy, and yeah, he brought it to life, I guess, and we just shot the video in a day, and that was it pretty much.
Yeah. So, I want to make sure that we hit on all the bases here. So the comp, it was like, okay, it's got to be less than a minute. And have you guys ever written music with those like set of limitations in a certain way? Because, I'm just thinking we just had Kevin from Knocked Loose on the podcast, and we were talking about the new EP and how they approached the songwriting on that release was like writing to a specific emotion. So the first track is like, okay, the emotion is panic. So it's like, how can I write a guitar riff that sounds like someone's panicking, or, transitions and lyrics and drum fills. So like, I think that is really I think that's such a healthy exercise for bands, not to be like, what's the hardest riff that I can write, and then do that 20 times over for the band's existence. So how did you, Josh, maybe you can speak to this being one of the guitar players. Like, how did you guys, like Jem said, like pack so much as far as like riffs and just transitions? Like, tell me about that process for you.
Well, I mean, Jem wrote the song. So if I don't say so myself, I think Jem's a great songwriter. He's a very musical guy. So, I mean, I know that it was a challenge for you, but it was just the sort of thing where it's like, we need to pack as much into this as we possibly can. It just needs to be as high energy as possible, especially knowing that it's going to be on a compilation of other 1 minute songs. Like, how do you sort of stand out and appear urgent in an environment like that? I think is another challenge in its own right. But once it was all recorded, we recorded most of the parts ourselves. Like Kane, our drummer, just recorded the drums at home. Jem, I think you did the guitars at home.
Actually, it was a lockdown project. So this was during the comp was being put together in the first lockdown. And so with all of the bands across Australia, it was like a bit of a challenge. Like Kane in Speed, for example, recorded the drums for Broken, who were in Melbourne, and it wasn't because it was just because no one could get into a recording studio because we were all in lockdown across the country. So we're kind of helping each other out and all that, sharing the duties. But I think to scale it back, I think with every song, there's never a set of rules of like this song has to do this and this song has to do this. But there's absolutely an approach of this song should be this kind of tempo and should have this kind of part, this kind of structure. Maybe this kind of song now should be a longer, more like quote unquote anthemic song with choruses in it, blah blah blah. So there's always a framework in the way of approaching every single song, especially how it's going to fit into the context of a record and blah blah blah. But with this one, I think it was also easier because that framework was set for you. It was like 1 minute, and I think when you only have 1 minute, you just got to go all in straight away, right? So I guess that's probably why the song starts the way it does, and then just as well fitting as many different mosh parts into a song as possible, like not just the one, but multiple. That's always important. I think every single Speed song ever needs to be moshable,
for sure,
and it's a must.
Yeah, absolutely. I think where it came to life though was, so all the instrumentation was done, and then we listened back to it. We're like, I think it needs a little bit of tightening up. So we'd planned on it just being completely DIY, but then we were like, no, we'll take it to Elliot, our mate that runs Chameleon Studios, which is where we recorded the demo and the flexi and everything. And so we got him to do a quick little mix on it. And one of the sort of signatures that he does when he sends a band a mix, it's almost like a watermark that he puts on the record, so that it's like, this is it, but give us the approval, and then once everything's done, then I'll send you the real deal. The thing that he always puts on there is an air horn.
The air horn was his idea.
Yeah, and so he's put air horns on other bands' records before, and they weren't happy about it because they wanted to listen to it and really sort of feel the way that the record's meant to sound, and then halfway through you've got this obnoxious air horn over the top.
It used to be a thing that he would do, like pretty much it's like, here you go, and this has got the air horn on it, so until you pay me I'm going to take it off, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So
So he's doing it in a way to almost like, fuck you, pay me. More like, this is my favorite thing to put on.
It's not a fuck you, but it's just like a, I don't know. It's like giving a preview of the artwork you've done with your stamp on it, saying copyright.
Totally.
It's like his producer tag. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's just he used to do this a while ago, and because we've known him for so long, it's like a bit of a running joke. He used to do sound for our other band before.
So in theory, songs off the demo and the flexi probably had an air horn just placed randomly, but like taken off for the actual final. Okay, I understand that. So so when you guys,
so he throws that on,
yeah,
and we like, we listen to him and like sort of laugh about it and like, all right, cool, yeah, I mean, we'll take that off obviously, but sounds good for now. Anyway, then we ended up going into the studio to do the vocals because the vocals would just sound better there, and we all went there and Jem recorded it all, and then there was a couple of little things that we kind of changed around, like, there might have been lyrics that we were like, oh, let's repeat that part there, or let's change the rhythm of that part there, or whatever.
Right.
And then we kind of just sat there and tried to figure out as much dumb shit as we could fit in on top of it.
Right.
So then we knew that there needed to be a dive bomb in there, but we didn't have a guitar with us at the time that had a whammy bar.
Okay.
So we're like, all right, we're going to have to sample a dive bomb from somewhere. What's the best dive bomb of all time? Bret Hart's theme music. So we got that, but it was too short, so we had to like manipulate it and like stretch it out, add a bunch of effects and shit to it to make it work. So people have been able to pick that up too, which is crazy.
Yeah, like that was not a known thing for me. So that's that's wild.
Yeah, I see comments on like the YouTube video and stuff. Sometimes you're like, is that Bret Hart's theme music? Like, yeah,
I don't know how you'd ever pick that up.
Yeah, and then just other things. I think like the tambourine and stuff like that. Like
the tambourine, added all this extra stuff in. Almost like plus 6 dB 808, like bass
that's
drop,
another Elliott signature, the bass drop.
Yeah. So again, you're like the whole like purpose of the song is again to have it under a minute for this comp. Like you guys weren't adding these things in some like mischievous way to be like, oh, the crazier it is, maybe the more viral it gets. You're just like, you guys were just like literally just having fun making this almost like absolutely. Frankenstein of a song in some cases.
Oh, absolutely. Exactly. It was just we absolutely had multiple guitars with whammy bars on it. We just couldn't be fucked to pull it out. We were just there just to record vocals and just do a bit of a mix. And we were like, oh, we should put a dive bomb. We're like, oh, well,
it was just
let's just rip one off, whatever. Okay. We just didn't care. It was just
it was just
fun.
Pull up,
just literally
just YouTube it. Oh yeah, let's just grab that one.
Yeah. So it was just meant to be fun, bro.
Yeah. So
like everything.
Yeah. Again, you're just like, oh, okay, let's keep the dive bomb, let's keep the bass drop, let's keep the air horn. So again, you guys are like, okay, I think a video needs to go for this. And it's interesting, Jem, for you to say that, your perspective beforehand was like, do hardcore and music videos kind of blend together. And for me, because I grew up on a lot of like music video core, if you want to call it that, in the early stages of YouTube, where it wouldn't be like you watch one video and then all you're recommended is just within that subject or that band. It's like actually finding out about bands through like you do like Avenged Sevenfold, then you go to Atreyu, and then you go to 18 Visions, and you just like literally the rabbit hole kind of goes down. So you guys shoot the video, you're making it super wild and like a fun time. You go to post the video. Tell me like the first 24 hours of like posting the video and like what happens from your perspective, because a lot of people were just like, holy shit, this like
talk about the first like 5 minutes. remember what happened?
You said, I can't remember.
So every time Jem posts a video on our Instagram or something, he freaks out. He goes, "Oh fuck! I think something's happened like with the algorithm. Like, like nothing's happening. Like it doesn't look like anybody's like seeing it."
Mm-hmm.
And then it would like be messaging us like, "If you guys open like the app right now, is the video coming up? Like, can you see it?" Because I don't know. Instagram always fucks up like that. Like there'll be little problems with certain types of content. Sure. Like it just kind of falls to the back of the thing. So the first couple of minutes was like a little bit of panic because we thought that it hadn't worked properly. and we're gonna have to take it down and start again.
We were just kind of just like, fuck it, I don't want to do any, like, we're just gonna post it straight to our Instagram. Like, this is 1 minute, let's just post it on that. I don't care. And then we just also posted it on I don't know, we used IGTV or something like that, and I never used it before. Right? And I'd seen sometimes like, I don't know, in the tab that sometimes you see the plays, and some people, like, it might just have 10 plays on it or something, like, for whatever reason, it doesn't maybe get the same engagement like a normal post would.
Sure.
So I wasn't sure if that was happening, and obviously this is like a launch of a music video, so I was like, like, checking with the fellas, like, should we repost it, or like, should we do something about it? Like, I don't want to get stuck. But that was for like the first 5-10 minutes, and then I was at work. I posted it. I pulled up to work in my car, pressed post, went into work, whatever. I don't know. It did its thing, but then after like an hour, I remember checking the insights, or 2 hours or something, and it had like, I remember looking in, and it had like 100 shares. I was like, okay, whoa, holy shit! Like, that was fast. Like, that's a lot of shares, bro. Like 100 shares. And then I remember it came to the end, like my lunch break, and it had like 900 shares. And I was like, oh, like, that's not actually 900 likes. That's 900 shares, bro. Like, what's happening, kind of thing. I've never ever seen anything like that happen before. Like, that was insane. And then, I don't know, like, long story
didn't stop.
It was, long story short, dude, like, had no idea, had no expectation for this to ever do anything like this, but I literally couldn't sleep for about 3 days properly. It was I was driving, like, I was at work, and my phone was literally blowing up. It was like, don't have notifications, but every time I opened Instagram or whatever, it was just, everything was maxed out. It was just like maximum love hearts for all the shit. You know what I mean?
Just maximum love hearts for speed.
You know, I don't know what the number is, but it was just, I'd never seen it like that. And the DMs were just like, you know what I mean? I was like, this is what it's like to have like Post Malone's phone. You know what I mean? Just crazy, like, just constantly going, right? And then it was so crazy. I was like, because I'm a teacher, I was like teaching, talking to the kids, but like so kind of
distracted
at the same time. In the back of my mind, I was like, what's happening, kind of thing, kind of waiting for it to hit 3 p.m. to go home. And then I was at home, and I just didn't know what, I was in my car, and it was just so much energy. I just didn't know what to do. I was just like screaming in my car, just like trying to get energy out. And then I just like trying to call everybody I could call, like called Josh. He didn't pick up, he was at work. I tried to call Aaron, he didn't pick up, he was at work. Tried to call my girlfriend. I don't know what she was doing. Called Dennis, like, and I was like, bro, do you understand what's happening right now? Like, dude, like, I gotta talk to someone. Like, what the hell's happening, man? And anyways, it was just mind blowing, man. It was like just so many different people. Like, the thing is that like almost like let alone like people in hardcore and whatever in Australia, but around the world, kind of reacting to it. It was just like a crazy list, just almost everyone that we could ever want to imagine, pretty much. But the intention outside of that was beyond hardcore was even more. It was like much more attention beyond hardcore, like especially in Australia, and I think as well, like in America and other parts of the world, it was like just a lot of people from like producers and rappers and hip hop artists and like R&B artists and like heaps of people just hitting us up. Like people were trying to people like car salesmen were trying to like hit us up and give us their cars, bro. From like South Sydney, like saying like, here, look.
Hey, I saw that car in the video. Can you?
Yeah, like I got lowriders and shit. Like here's an example, and like other like rappers, managers were like hitting us up, being like, okay, hey, like I want to work with you guys, like blah blah blah, and all this kind of stuff, and like people like. It was very, very, very extremely mind-blowing, because you gotta know, man. Like, I mean, we spoke about this in the last pod probably, but Australian hardcore is such a tiny thing.
Yes,
like it's such a tiny thing. It is literally like a bee's dick in the hive of the whole world, right? But especially in Australia, man, like it is tiny. Like if you think that hardcore is small, like Australian hardcore is small in America, like it's small in Australia, dude. It is so tiny. Like, and getting even attention for a band to like play, I guess, like even an opening slot for like an international touring band that's like maybe on the fringes of hardcore is kind of like a deal for any band here.
Totally.
So to get any kind of recognition like this, you know, within the hardcore, but then beyond like that, is like absolutely crazy. And it showed, I don't know, like I think it ended up having like 5,000, 6,000 shares.
Yeah.
Something like that. And just the
Yeah,
views were just
Yeah,
going up by like 1,000 a minute or something.
Yeah, at the time of recording this, I checked back and it's just past 100K views, which is like for a hardcore band is wild in my opinion when it comes to music videos, especially just
on
through
Instagram,
like
dude,
Instagram, you know.
Yeah, like no, it's totally organic, you know. Like
totally, yeah. There's no email campaign connected to We See You. It's just
no man.
It's just the people.
No money behind it. You know what I mean? Just purely organic.
Yeah. And then the Twitter was popping. Like I was like, oh, maybe I should post this on the Twitter too. People don't know Twitter that had like, I don't even know, 60,000 views or something. It was shared like thousands of times too. Like we don't even Twitter, like Australian bands don't even use Twitter really. Australian other bands don't even use Twitter. You know what I mean? Like our Twitter following is like pretty much all overseas.
Yeah. Dude, it's really funny because I've really I have really not underestimated but undervalued hardcore Twitter because it's always just like when I think about it, it's just like people like getting upset about some band doing this and canceling these all certain people or whatever. So I really avoided it for a long time when it came to like the content that I do, and then it was like, okay, maybe I should just start trying to share different things. So when I just did Promcore, I would like toss up a set. And I'm like, holy fuck, there's like way more shares on this clip. And then, like certain, like the Scowl set that I posted, like went kind of viral there and like the Zulu drum cam. Like, so I'm like, okay, I was wrong. Like hardcore Twitter exists and it's
must
valuable.
be big in America. I know it's big in America. Like heaps of,
it's definitely like, in America, I think it's definitely most popular in America. But yeah, going back to the video, like I was just like so stoked for you guys because like, Jem coming on, over a year ago at this point, like there were so many instances where I would talk about your band either on the podcast or just in passing of like, this is a band that like I really want people to know about because I'm genuinely a big fan of you guys. And then to see you guys get like I think for any and every band, it only takes one song. It only takes one song to like take it from here to like that next level, right? And so, like you guys did the demo and then like the 2-song thing kind of brought you to Flat Spot. And then this kind of shot you guys like to another atmosphere, if anything. So I was like really, really stoked for you guys. But I wanted to hit on that just to be like, hey, it doesn't need to be this like perfectly planned marketing scheme of like, getting your music. It could be as simple as just, writing a really dope song, having fun with your friends and putting air horns and like little things that you think make a good hardcore song, shooting a cool video and putting it out and seeing what the hardcore market does with it.
Totally, yeah. And like the response to the video has definitely opened a lot of doors for us, but it hasn't changed our approach. You know what I mean? Like we're not gonna act any differently. Like we haven't changed our plans. You know what I mean? Like the stuff that we have coming up is exactly the same as it was before that song came out.
It's not like, here's the excuse to now be the cool guy band or anything like that.
yeah, or just do things that like, because the opportunity's there, we like, I don't know, we still have to limit what we do to fit within the vision of what we see the band as.
It's like I can't remember if we spoke about it in the last pod or not, but like, Speed is a band that has always started with a very clear mission. It's one mission, one goal, really. And that vision, it's a simple band, it's a hardcore band, you know what I mean? It's all about for fun, but it's about the community, and this vision from the beginning has never changed. It's very tangible to us, and it's as cheesy or weird as it might sound, it's something that's very important. It is the reason why we started the band, and this is just it's just a part of that process. It's been an incredible bonus and it's been amazing, but it's also been such a rewarding experience, Spencer, because just like this, the way we approach this song and the way we approach everything we do, we kind of have an idea about how we want to go about it. We have a plan, we have a bit of foresight about what a bit of a process beyond that too. And in my mind, I'd like to think that things would hit. I like to think that things would work. But you know, whether it plays out is another thing. And I get, you know, what we've done so far has seems to have played out, and it's been such a great lesson it's brought me such confidence to know that we just stay true to our authenticity. We just stick to our plan and our overall mission, and also not be shy to put our identity into the band. You know, to be bold with who we are as people and our culture, and try these things. You know, like I was very aware going into shooting that video that it was quite obnoxious. You know, and also like it's quite strange, but that was the only way that felt natural to me to shoot the video rather than to kind of do the normal way of shooting a rock band, guitar band music video. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I guess, you know, people responded to it really, really positively. And that's extremely humbling, you know, because it's just affirmation that people connected with who we are and what we believe in. Yeah. And as Josh says, it doesn't change the mission at all. It's just very, very, very rewarding and very fulfilling and just a massive G up, bro, for us and our community and everybody. You know, it's so special.
Yeah, anyone who's been in hardcore for a long time, you know, whether they're in their 30s, 40s, even in their 50s, I think there's such great lessons and things and skill sets that people can learn playing in bands, doing record labels, filming stuff. So it's really, really cool to hear, like, you know, doing this video, like, upped your confidence in that way. So it's like, oh, like, that's not only stuff that I feel like I can apply that confidence into band stuff. It's also stuff that I can apply into the rest of my life as well. So
absolutely.
I think that is super magical to be able to, like, have that. And, you know, I think people maybe underestimate just like what character traits can be built up when you play in like a hardcore or punk band.
You know, like Spence, like I always came to this band with one part of that mission was always to put, you know, my cultural identity into it. You know, like coming from, you know, my background, like being a first generation Australian, you know, my parents from Malaysia, and that it's always been important to me to represent who I am in my art, quote unquote. Because in my experience, you know, in terms of my identity, I don't know if many other people have experienced this, but you know, I kind of never saw someone who embodied or who I wanted to be or how I saw myself, just because of the way I grew up culturally and the way I was brought up here. And the same goes with my brother Aaron, and the same goes with Dennis too. And this band was the way that I could kind of communicate what I'm into and how I can be kind of like, you know, just as an Asian male. And with this video came out, you know, that has been, you know, it's been a conscious decision for me to put that on show. Like, for example, you look at the demo cover and it's just got us on the cover. It was important that I wanted people to listen to the demo and know who we are, what we look like when they listen to it. You know, it's not just maybe an American sounding band or whatever, but with the video as well, with obviously that's putting that on show. And there's been one other thing which, you know, which was very touching is there's hell Asians, bro, everywhere who are connecting with the video. You know, so many people, and I think like it's so crazy, man. Like we're in hardcore, but like beyond that as well, like people of color and stuff reaching out about it. And it is not something like, it's not meant to be a political thing for me. You know, it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna raise my flag and I'm gonna, like, you know, say this about, you know, it wasn't meant to be like that. It's just really just, I want you to see who I am. That's it. That's all. Totally. That's all it is. Yeah. You know? And I don't know, people like connected with that on a way that was so much deeper than I thought. And it's trickled into so many different cracks, and people from so many different like little subcultures and other worlds like kind of latched onto it. And all I can say was that, like, that again, that is the affirmation and confidence for me as a person of being like, nah, I can be me. I can be exactly who I am and what I believe, and put that on show. And it's impactful, or it seems to be an experience or something that other people can kind of tie in with, and so that's been such a big lesson, and it's awesome moving forward, because I think that's such an important thing for anyone's craft, to put your identity into that. And that's something that Josh and I always talk about, something that has only just been more reaffirmed through this whole journey, which is just so amazing, man. So that's yeah, that is just something really special that really has touched me in this whole experience.
Right. Yeah. And you know, like something that a tour that happened kind of recently here on on North American soil was Zulu, Buggin, and Move, and they kind of did like a week long thing. And when that tour got announced, I was really really excited because it's like a lot of those bands have a lot of black representation. Like Zulu the entire band is all black folk, so it was super. You know, like it's not like this, like you said, Jem, it's not like this planned thing of like, oh, we're, you know, like we're trying to like only get these people out, but just like looking at some of the videos that were being shared, it was like so like just so violent and crazy and people just having the time of their lives, but just like you said, so much representation solely because a lot of the like all members of that band had, you know, the entire lineup wasn't just white cis male. And I think that is so important to like not undervalue just like the fact that someone who represents like a different race or culture or sexual orientation or whatever it is, even just like there's so much power in that person just standing on stage and holding a guitar or being behind the drum kit or like holding the microphone. Like that speaks to people. Like you don't need to be like, you don't necessarily need to like pump that into your lyrics and only talk about that. Like, you know, you look at all those bands and like each of those bands writes about different things. Some people, some of those bands are like really political and some aren't at all. But I think there's such power in communicating like, hey, you have a space here. If I can do this, you can do this as well. And I think that's super cool to hear how you had so many Asian people from all over the world just reaching out and how awesome it is to not only see you but your brother. You know, like the majority of the band seems to be in that world too. So I think it is like super cool, like and just the power and just like presenting yourself that way in the forefront.
Yeah Thanks, man.
I think that is our like central motivation for everything that we do collectively. Our mission with the band, with the podcast, just with the way that we interact with people in the community, like we want to try to rewrite the culture of hardcore a little bit, and put a sense of individuality as the central ethic of hardcore, like really championing that idea of everybody should be themselves and should amplify their personality to the fullest in this environment. I think that's hardcore at its most exciting, right? And that's something that we try to do. Like we try to bring that out of our peers. We say like, you know, you need to start a band or you need to do this or whatever. Like we try to push them as much as possible because it's just so much more exciting. You know what I mean? Like that tour with Zulu, Move, and Buggin. I saw the photos and the videos from that, and it's just exciting, man, because when has that happened before? You know what I mean? Like that's
totally.
That didn't exist, and they're changing the game. You know what I mean?
The thing is that like everyone's weird, bro. Like every single human being is really weird. Okay, some are just more skewed than others, but that's something that you should cherish yourself, because if you think that you're weird and what you're doing is like not aligning with how other people see or set themselves up, I guarantee you there are so many other people. There are many people, or at least even a few other people that are on the same train as you who think that they're weird or who are looking for someone like you to identify with. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like there is a space for everybody's identity to kind of exist and it's important. I think that gets showed, because with this experience, it's like, yeah, I'm an Asian Australian and I'm into this and that. And I come from here and, you know, I do this as a job and I have this kind of life outside of hardcore and blah, blah, blah. And like, oh, but you know, hardcore kids don't do that. And like, that's not what hardcore like bands look like. And maybe I shouldn't behave that way. Maybe I shouldn't put that on show. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
no, that's kind of what makes me me. And that's an important part of the experience. And just from all these people kind of reaching out, it shows that there's so many other people who are kind of there, like, I haven't had a chance to show myself this way or to express myself like this, because it has, maybe I haven't been given, or I just haven't been granted. I haven't granted myself the confidence to be able to deliver that. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not articulating it the best, but
no, but I think you're totally right. Is like showing up as yourself and being proud of that, because I think it's very easy to be like, oh, you play in a punk rock band. Like, not every hardcore kid is a tattoo artist, barista, or works at like Vans, or you know what I mean? Like
Sure.
there's people that have like who have 6-figure salary jobs. Like they are doing something badass in that department. Maybe they're a teacher like Jem. Maybe they're in oil and gas. Maybe they're like a vet, like whatever it is. I think that is so interesting because then it showcases that we all come from different pockets. It doesn't need to be this like, oh, we all came from the streets. So I want to push a little bit here because Josh, you were mentioning like rewriting hardcore in a way, and I feel like I'm a firm believer in what I do with Scoped and my band and all the things in between, where it's like I'm just trying to be the change that I want to see, not to try and pat myself on the back of doing those things. But I think when you do that, sometimes there are people that like really are like, yo, this is really cool that there's finally a band in this subgenre that's doing that, or a Canadian podcast or whatever it is. But at the same time, there's always people that are like trying to preserve it and gatekeep it and like try to silence you. So I'm kind of curious on where change in the hardcore scenes, as far as an evolution, where that's good and where that's like, oh, is there too much change here? I'm kind of curious on your thoughts on that.
I mean, it's hard to say from an Australian perspective, just because the community is so small. The change that we've sort of seen in the last couple of years has been overwhelmingly positive. And I mean, the biggest change is just that more people are getting into it, right?
Right.
In a healthy way.
Yeah. I don't know. Is there anything like negative that you see?
I think in terms of Australia, the reason like we're coming out with this approach because it's small and there is. This is the community that we want to see. This is what we care about. We love hardcore. We've been into it. We've been doing this shit for 15, 16, 17, however many years now, you know what I mean? And more than half my life. And I'm a full adult. People who we grew up with at this age now are doing different things, you know what I mean?
Right.
But for some reason, I'm still here and I'm still more passionate about it than ever. That means something. And I don't want to tell people, I'm sick and tired of the last 6, 7 years being like, oh yeah, I'm into hardcore, and kind of being weird about it and talking to people outside of at work, or people like who don't get it, just being like, oh, I'm into this thing, but I got nothing to show because there's no sick bands or there's no good shows or like, you know what I mean? There's no excitement. It doesn't represent me. Like going back to, again, what I said before, it just didn't represent what I thought was cool. And so many people fall out of it because they got older, they matured, and they move on to the next thing because I really think that there was nothing left here that represented where they wanted to be or how they saw themselves. And it's totally fair. That's totally fair for them to move on. Like it's totally fine. You know what I mean? I don't care. But for us doing this, it's like, no, we're into this, and hardcore's sick because of these reasons. This is what I see in it. It's sick because you can do this. It's so accessible. Anyone can pick up and play. It's given me all these amazing friendships. It's given me this community, which I have never ever experienced such a like intrinsic connection with anywhere else in other communities. You know, I'm not someone who has only grown up in hardcore my whole life. Many different communities and things that and spheres have been involved with. But this, for some reason, has something else that's so different and so meaningful. You know what I mean? And that is the kind of, and the way that Josh and I and our friends kind of see it, I guess it's just the way that we've just been wanting to push it. So the other thing about hardcore that is so amazing is that it is about the individual involvement. It's a community based on participation. People need to start projects and contribute in whichever way that they can.
Right.
And it's a youth movement as well. And in Australia, coming out where we don't have much of an all ages scene at the moment, you know, we see it as like we are part of that generation that is to keep it moving. So, well, obviously I'm going to imprint it the way that I think is healthy. And for us as well, like about, this is not like us at all trying to be some fucking dude standing on a mountain with like a big sword and being like, we're going to bring back hardcore. We're going to champion back this shit. Like, not at all. Like, it's just, we care about it and we want to see it do well. And we want our friends to do well. We want everybody in Australia to eat, you know? So just do it the way we know. And that's literally all it is. And there always obviously there'll be people out there who gatekeep it. And I understand that we come at it with like pretty open arms. We have a pretty broad perspective, and we're very welcoming and all that. But honestly, I don't. It just there are people who have other opinions about it, and I totally respect that too. If people like you should gatekeep more and all that kind of thing, like I get that too. Like to a big extent, it should be like otherwise hardcore wouldn't be the way it was. If it wouldn't be hardcore if there wasn't some kind of mentality behind that, you know. But in the context of where we are in Australia, like we just want a healthy scene and we want more people there, and we have to open those doors, because we have seen some attitudes like that in the past that have really kind of kicked a lot of people out or just pushed them away, you know. So
well, yeah, my perspective on like being choosy about different things when it comes to gatekeeping is like are there things that we shouldn't be bringing into hardcore? It's like obviously like homophobia, like any of those, like racism, any of those things is like obviously there's no place there, and those should be kept out like the minute that is snuffed out. But I think when it's like, oh, this band is playing and they have backtracks, I don't think that we should support this band. It's like, well, maybe it's their first band, so maybe it's like about meeting them where they're at and then kind of bringing them along. Because like I think anyone has played in bands that are like, you know, quote unquote cringy or like, you know, not hardcore. But I think it's about meeting the person where they're at and supporting them, and then almost just by example getting them more within the culture, not to 100%. Try and brainwash them into playing New York hardcore and not playing, you know, Attack on Attack kind of metalcore. But I think it's just about welcoming people in, because I think that was a big thing for me, where I came from playing in pop punk bands and metalcore bands and then started playing hardcore shows, and then being able to be a part of that community and see it and like just wet my palate with it more and more. That has just cemented things and galvanized things in a way where now I'm at a point like both of you guys, where it's like I've been in this for over 10 years and I see no end in sight as far as like an expiry date or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So I think like the intention and the action at the beginning is so important in my opinion, versus like trying to be all like, oh, well, we don't, like our scene doesn't really like that style of music. It's like, well, you know, there's such an importance on like welcoming people and getting them a part of the community. And then, you know, I almost feel like it's the first step is like people playing in bands. And then once they actually feel welcome, they'll go off and start booking shows by themselves, start filming, start taking photos, you know, do a podcast. Like you need that like first intro versus like someone's doing a podcast and then coming into hardcore, or someone is a photographer and then comes into so, you know, it's so crucial to make sure people are actually welcomed and give people a chance, right?
Absolutely.
No, you hit the nail on the head, man. And that's exactly how we feel about it as well. Like there are bands in our community of young people who play a style that isn't necessarily, you know, what me and Jem listen to, but we embrace them, you know what I mean? Like we're welcoming them into our world as much as we can, and, you know, spotlighting them where we can with the podcast, or, you know, playing shows with them, because they're young people, they're into heavy music. We obviously have some common ground with them. So it doesn't make sense to reject people like that. You know what I mean? Right. They're people that they're like-minded people. So
yeah, I think it's
exciting to see those people, you know, do their thing as well.
Totally.
And it's also, you know, you can't have the expectation that they're going to be into the exact same thing as you, but you help sort of give them that nudge and say, you know, this is sort of how you do things as a DIY band.
Right.
And then they go and create their own thing. Yeah. And it's not exactly the same as what you did, but that's the point. You know what I mean? Like totally. It shouldn't be a repeat of what you did. It should be an interpretation of it.
I couldn't have said that better myself. And I think, you know, recognizing that you probably have more in common with the person with the band that you might not necessarily fuck with than you probably do with any of your coworkers is like,
totally.
You should remind yourself of that.
Yeah, man.
There's one ethos that kind of like, I don't know, but there's 7 billion people on the planet, man. 7 billion people. Like, there's a lot of different people. There's a lot of different experiences. There's a lot of different stories. You know what I mean? Not everybody's the same. So like, at the same time with hardcore and stuff, and in this kind of music, that's already one factor that brings you so much closer to the next person, you know?
Right. Yeah. If there's 7 billion people, imagine the percentage of all of those people that know what like two-stepping or breakdown is. You know? It's like 0.00, you know? Like I'm sure it's I would be flabbergasted if it was even 1%. But I'm gonna use you guys brought up the podcast a couple of times, so I'm gonna use that as our segue into talking about that, because Jim and I didn't talk about form of passion really at all. And to be totally transparent, I don't think I actually knew about the podcast before we actually did our episode. But for anyone who doesn't know about form of passion or what that is, can you guys just give? Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I apologize.
No, I just
profusely.
I'm not offended. I don't want to steal any valor because Form of Passion is an incredible podcast.
Yeah, shout out to Ace. I think honestly, I think I would always just like, you guys have very similar names.
It's easy. It's
so
easy.
I apologize.
No, I don't mind.
Tell me about Forge Ahead and like how the idea of that came to be.
So I mean,
Jordan, edit that out.
This all kind of kicked off really early into, I guess, what we were doing with Speed. And we were kind of already on this journey where we started this band. It was very purpose driven. We had this idea of, you know, what sort of impact we wanted to have on our community with the band. And then 6 shows into Speed's career, lockdown happened. COVID sort of kicked off. And so we're all kind of sitting there a couple of weeks into the first lockdown, kind of thinking about what we can do, not necessarily to sort of keep the band going, but just to sort of keep the energy that we'd been creating going. And a lot of the stuff that was centered around the band just it didn't feel helpful. Like, it didn't really feel like it served anybody but us to do. Like, you know, if we make more music or we make more merch or whatever, you know, it helps sort of build a platform for us, but it doesn't really build the community as much while there's no shows on. So I guess, we had this idea to start a podcast, and we spent a couple of days just sort of fleshing it out. You know, me and Jem would just get on the phone for a couple of hours every day and just sort of figure out like what our mission was, how we wanted to run it, what we wanted the sort of central purpose of it to be. And what we kind of landed on was that we just wanted one sort of democratic platform that we felt like represented everybody's individual interests. And the way that we would do that was by spotlighting whatever band wanted to be involved in it, getting as many sort of different people, regardless of what their sort of status in the scene is, regardless of whether they're in a band or they run a label. If they're just a person that sort of comes to shows and is really into the music, we wanted to give them an opportunity to talk, and then use whatever sort of momentum the podcast had to reflect that in, you know, if we post an Instagram post, you know, leave a comment on there to sort of spark some sort of discussion, or you know, just using all of those sort of different channels to sort of just get people talking about hardcore. Because Jem sort of alluded to the fact that hardcore, you know, kind of took a bit of a dip in Australia for many years, with people's just enthusiasm just wasn't there for so long. And I think that something that was really missing was just a public place that people talk enthusiastically about hardcore. Because when we were growing up, like, that was all over the internet. You could log into whatever forum or, you know, go on whatever social media, and there would be people talking about whatever new bands were out. And it was exciting, you know what I mean? It made you want to go check stuff out. It made you want to go to shows, made you want to engage with the culture a lot more. And that's something that I think the Australian scene just hasn't had for so long. And so that was kind of the purpose in the beginning, was just talk about hardcore in a public place. And if you do, maybe other people will enjoy it and it will get them excited about hardcore. And it's had that effect for sure. Like, there's so many friends of ours that, you know, we grew up going to hardcore shows with, older people that have, you know, gone and gotten married and had kids and moved on with their life and don't go to shows all the time anymore, would hit us up and say, fuck, I really enjoyed listening to this. I'm going to start a band. I'm going to start another band, or I'm going to come to, as soon as lockdown ends, I'm going to come to a show. Like, all of these different sort of people sort of came out of the woodwork. And, you know, we're really excited about it. And so we've just tried to sort of maintain that energy as much as we can. while embracing people that are just discovering it as well.
Right.
We've had heaps of friends that aren't into hardcore but know us, who check it out and go, oh, it was really interesting. Like, I want to know more about it, or I want to come see you guys play, or whatever. And so, yeah, it's been a really rewarding opportunity for us to be able to just get to know people.
Right. And also
and
for,
just kind of push that agenda.
For people to get to know you guys as well. Like,
for sure.
This is our first time actually having a back and forth, but I feel like I know you so much just of listening to episodes.
Yeah. No, likewise.
Yeah, exactly. But I
the
do
other
think
thing as well was,
you go, Jem.
The other thing as well was just that we had spent so many years up until that point, just being involved, that we'd met so many awesome people with so many sick stories, people that are so inspiring to us that we're kind of grateful to call friends. And I guess everybody went through the same kind of reflective period in COVID, thinking about, their lives and experiences and what's important to them. And a big thing that we want to do with the pod as well is just to immortalize some of the stories.
Yeah, right,
just have people on and be like, you're a legend for XYZ, and we want you to talk on that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of part of the mission of the pod is to immortalize some of those awesome things, because I don't know, I'm not sure if it's something that we think has value.
Totally. And I think it's very clear. We've talked multiple times of having a clear mission of whatever you're doing, whether that's your band or the podcast or anything like that. So for you guys to be very intentional about immortalizing certain conversations, documenting them, giving people your roses as far as like people that really influence you and your local scene. Like I look at that as such like a privilege for me to like hit up someone that like really influenced me growing up in Canadian hardcore music and being able to talk with them for, an hour or an hour and a half. So whether they're in the hardcore space or not. And I feel like, like I've gotten so many messages like after shows started to come back a little bit more, like people thanking me for doing the podcast over that time, because I didn't have any like live show content to post. So I started to double down on the podcast. But so many people were like, yo, like you talking about bands and records and all those things like really kept me interested in hardcore as a whole. And it sounds like it was kind of the same for you, that even people that maybe weren't going to shows they could still quote unquote be inspired about hardcore through listening to the podcast. I also thought it was really interesting, and you guys have had some self-narration on some episodes about you guys wanted it to be very intentional, that it wasn't like the speed podcast, or the podcast wasn't to only promote the band. It was like, when stuff is coming up, like you'll mention it, but it was like you'll ride for speed as much as you would any other Australian hardcore band or person.
Yeah. Which speed is just synonymous. Well, in our minds, it's the whatever success our band was ever have, it needs to flow onto Australia. It's synonymous with the progress of our scene, I guess.
Right.
And that's just a vehicle. It's just a vehicle for us to make music and do our thing. And but they both have the same mission. Forge Ahead is just kind of putting that into words in a different format. Being able to speak on that. But yeah, it with the pod, especially, it's not meant to be like, oh, this is the Josh and Jem pod, or anything like that. It's just, well, this is a format that we can use to talk about what we want to talk about. It's rather than writing out in a zine or making a blog post, like it's just we're just talking in a mic.
yeah, and I think it's really really interesting. I wanted to ask you guys, like, as far as like, because I think that there's been a lot of not upswing, but like hardcore and podcasting and hardcore podcasts are like kind of like, I feel like it's still just getting started. I feel like there's definitely a lot of like established shows, and it's really cool to see, like when Joe Hardcore started the This Is Hardcore podcast, that was so, I couldn't have expected that, because I thought, like, shout out to Joe. I don't think he's listening, but like him being who he is and what he does, I assume that he like wouldn't do a podcast, if that makes sense.
Sure, yeah.
Like he's just an older individual. He might like not see the like I do a fest, that's my thing, and I play in some bands. But to see him do that,
it's not as if he doesn't have an avenue to contribute to hardcore already. You know what I mean? Like,
totally. Yeah, it's like you do so much already. But now to see him like doing that, I think is really cool. So I'm kind of curious for both of you guys, like if it's a person, a band, a festival, a record label, like if there was a future podcast that's in the works that you would personally tune in every week for. I'm kind of curious who you want to see. Because I'm, like I'll just shout out Sunny. I think if Sunny started a podcast, it would explode.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But I don't want to, that's my idea, but that's to inspire whatever your answers would be.
Oh man, Sunny is a great one.
You're so on the spot.
I would, a lot of bands do podcasts. Like I know Terra was doing a podcast for a bit where they were kind of going through their catalog and sort of telling stories about how they made all their records. I would love to hear a podcast from like the Baltimore dudes, like the Turnstile, Trapped Under Ice, Angel Dust sort of crew, just because every time they bring out new music, it's so fascinating. Like they're just on another level with the way they make music, and
also talking about how they like built up that reputation, because Baltimore was 100%. Like not on the map for a lot of hardcore kids like 10 years ago.
Totally. Yeah. So I think that would be it, just because I think they have so much. Their perspective would be so interesting. I mean, we spoke to Defang for one of the earliest episodes of the pod,
right?
And it's such a refreshing perspective. You know what I mean? Just really, really genuine love of making music. And so, I would love to hear more about that, especially from some of the other people in that camp, I think.
Yeah, the Baltimore hardcore podcast, like I would tune in for that as well. So
100%.
Daniel, if you're listening, let's make it happen.
Set it up, get a Pop Week podcast or something.
The Pop Week
podcast would be dope. That would be dope.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some alliteration to that, so
exactly. Yeah, it rolls off the tongue.
Jem, where's your mind going with that?
I honestly, I would say the same. I know that's not very inspiring. I would say the same.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest podcast listener. Like I was not someone who listened to heaps before doing this or anything. Again, so it was kind of like a format that we just used because it just made sense. Right. But yeah, I would agree.
Right. Yeah. What's kind of what do you think? I feel like it's kind of the same for me. Like since I started this podcast, I'm like, I'll kind of see where it's going. I'll interview some people, and now it's like, it's kind of exploding where like I want to do different styles of shows and different things. So I'm kind of curious on where your guys' heads at as far as like where Forge Ahead is going and where and what new stuff you want to do into 2022.
We have a bucket list of things that we want to achieve with the pod. Maybe it's people we want to speak to or topics we want to speak on. Scenes kind of we want to explore, experiences that we want to kind of document. And because we have this kind of perspective of documenting things in that way, we're also not tied to any kind of timeline with when we do things. And without shows, it was a lot easier during the last year and a half to kind of do this because this kind of filled that void, and we also felt a little bit more urgency on our end to kind of keep things going because there was nothing else going. But now that Australia is opening back up, we're all getting crazily busy again. There's more shows happening. There's just more energy happening. It feels a little bit. It feels good, not feeling so pressured to keep the momentum on, because it is a lot of work, especially when we're just
two people,
just doing it. You know what I mean? When we're trying to craft every episode, quite meticulously. So in terms of what we're going to do in the future, like we actually just did, we had a residency at a radio station here called FBI. We had a weekly hardcore show there, which was awesome.
And I saw you guys doing that.
Yeah. And, it would be sick to kind of maybe do a few more things like that, like later down the line. But I think moving forward, you know, we definitely have a whole bunch of different topics, as I said, that we want to hit on, but it always, because we see it as a way of like immortalizing the conversation, and that we want to make sure that it's always done in the best way possible. So there's a lot of things that we haven't been able to explore yet, just because like that we've tried to plan literally within the first 5-10 episodes of the pod, but because of timing and other reasons, you know, we haven't been able to do it with that person. And on our show as well, like, you know, we usually have multiple guests. It would not always just one person who's on.
Right.
We usually like to try and couple it, kind of trying to make it almost kind of like a show in terms of having like a lineup, you know, in the episode.
Yeah. Totally.
So when those kind of pieces all fall into place, that they will happen. And we're just kind of just taking it as it comes at the moment. It would be exciting to see what happens once bands tour again, because when more people come and we get face to face more, and I guess there's a bit more to talk about in terms of the way that the scene's moving to, that'll be awesome to explore.
Right. I think we've done a lot of talking about the community aspect of hardcore, which, you know, obviously the podcast format lends itself to really well, but I think it would be, I mean, one of the things that I really enjoyed about the radio experience was just focusing on the music and kind of taking a step back and just being like, rather than talking, we're just going to play all of our favorite stuff that's come out in Sydney, in Australia, and across the world for, you know, the next couple of hours. And that was a really cool experience. So I think moving forward, maybe trying to explore a little bit more of the music element of things. I know we've talked about some pretty like radical ideas before about how we can show like how easy it is to make hardcore music, and kind of like try to push that idea of like, start a band. It's that easy. Start a band.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Like being like actually interviewing people and showing like you like one of the most talked about bands as far as the time we're recording this is Scowl, and Malachi didn't know how to play guitar when he started that band, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
But so that's really interesting. And I think it is good to not stay one dimensional, like, you know, and have that freedom to play around for stuff. Because for Scoped, like literally Jordan, who's the producer of this podcast on the call, like I'll probably call him every other day, talk to him for half an hour to an hour of like, what if we did this on the podcast? Maybe what if we did this? So, because I'm realizing now that if it's an interview only kind of thing, it's like kind of only dependent on the person and what band they're a part of. Because like some of the best conversations I've had are like with people who aren't in hype bands, but those episodes maybe don't get as much love compared to when someone sees Jesus Piece or Drain or any of like, you know, band that has some kind of cloud attached to them. So I've started to think about like, you know, types of podcasts under the overall Scoped umbrella that are like just us, me and the team talking, and maybe we bring on someone to talk about something specifically. So eventually getting to a point where it's like every Scoped Exposure podcast, whether it's an interview, just a discussion with a group of people, or like a featurette of a bunch of new music, you can tune in for anything and it's going to be a good time. So I think building up that brand is really, really important. And I think you guys have done a really great job, because like I can listen to an episode you do with like Cole from Gulch, and then I'm listening to you guys talk about like one of your you know, local homies who runs Last Ride Records, or like, you know, puts on shows. So I think that's really, really important to not just be like, oh, I can only do this with my show. Like you can do whatever.
Definitely.
For sure. Yeah. Your show is your band. It's your life, bro. Just do it.
Is interviewing anyone from Parkway on your bucket list when it comes to the podcast?
Yes.
We would have to.
We have to.
Yeah. I would probably rip.
We have to talk. But it's again, it's easier said than done. It's a hard.
Yeah.
Do you know if they're aware of you guys? And
I'm not sure. So actually, it's funny, when the podcast started around the same time, a couple of other Australian hardcore podcasts popped up, and the drummer of Parkway's brother started one. He used to tour with them. And we went on that show and like did a pod with him. But even he had trouble getting a guest from Parkway on, and his family is in the band. So I don't know. I don't know how easy it is, how much access we would have, but it'd be awesome. It'd be insane to chat to
I
him.
really hope that happens one day, so I can clip this part of the podcast and slam it with you guys. Like, so here we are with so and so from Parkway.
Yeah, that would be crazy.
Yeah. Well, and I do think that it is like, if Jem and I, did a podcast a year ago, and if future Spencer or future Jem was like, yo, you're going to be able to have an interview with, these members of Knocked Loose or this person from this, like, I would be like, there's no way I have to build up. But like, I think it's kind of the whole like high school party mentality. Like if you like put on the party as far as like your podcast or your scene, you're the person booking shows, like people will want to flock there and people will want to be involved. So, I think it is really important to, this goes back to earlier stuff in our conversation about being the change you want to see. And, stranger things have happened, when it comes to doing this stuff. So you never know.
Well, you're running your pod out of West Canada, man. I mean, like, before I didn't even know that there was a scene there, and
right
now since becoming more aware of scopes since the first interview, it's blown up, bro. There's been so many bands that you've spoken to, so many huge bands, and so much momentum, so much traction, with artists all over the world, and it's a similar story. You just do your thing, you do it with passion and love, have a vision for it, and if people connect with people connect with it, and especially if you're doing it in the way that's authentic and meaningful to others, it's gonna be healthy. So that's what's happened with you, and that's why we will start to come back as well.
Of course,
we'll come back and speak to Spence because he's a legend. All the intentions are there, and you're killing it.
Well, that's a great segue into one of my last questions before we start to wrap up. So, what makes someone a legend, in your opinion? Because I know that's something that you guys both like. Jem specifically on the podcast, there's multiple times like, bro, you're a legend. And like some people sometimes are so like, oh, that's such a high compliment. Like I've never been called that before. So like, when does like legend status kick in your guys' opinion?
Legend status has to be someone that's inspirational. Someone that's inspiring. You know what I mean? Someone that inspires me, someone that has a quality that I really respect. Because, for example, for you, legend, why are you? You, Spencer. It's synonymous. Why are you a legend? It's because you don't have to do the pod. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of people out there who have opinions about what a podcast is and putting yourself out there, and it's hard, and not only just getting up and talking on like on a microphone and recording yourself, but also all the mental factors that go into that. Like, who wants to hear me talk? Who gives a shit about what I have to say? My voice sounds weird. I have to promote myself. That's a weird thing. Blah 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 blah. All that kind of bullshit. You know what I mean? But you don't realize the significance of someone actually putting yourself out there and especially going into it with good intentions. You're coming from exactly the right place, bro. You have a vision for what you want for your scene. You're putting your scene on the map. You're passionate. You've got your own life, but you're choosing to hone in and put your energy and your time into something like this, which is only just positive. And that's legendary, bro, because it's so difficult not to do that. It's so difficult to do that. Sorry. And it's so much easier just to chill, and just live in your own room and your own space and live your own simple life. You know what I mean? But
I should clarify, I wasn't trying to tee it up for Jem to tell me why I'm a great legend. I was like, I just want to hit on the word. I think it's just so interesting. But I think you're totally right. And we talked about this on our last podcast a little bit. It was like, it's so easy not to do, like, to play in a band. It's so easy to just go to the show or even not go to the show, Yeah. So I think every little detail matters. And especially for scenes that don't have the masses and the numbers and maybe all the hype bands and all the attention. It's like you need to do that to keep the conversation going. Like, going back to like a mission for Scoped, and like anyone who's close with me can attest to this. It's like it's all to like shine light on like, hey, we exist. Western Canada is, Canada is not just Toronto. It's not just Vancouver. We have a plethora of great bands and people that love hardcore here. And, if you come here, whether you're a band or a person just going to a festival or a show, like, you will have a good time and you will be shown a good time. So I think, I feel super grateful to be considered a legend by two legends on the other side of the screen here. So yeah, I really appreciate you guys coming back on the podcast. Before we end the show, we have to do a mosh story, and I'm always excited when I have multiple guests on, because then I get multiple mosh stories. So Josh is looking a little dumbfounded, like, what's a mosh story? So essentially it's anything that's first to your head as far as show, like, kind of a memory. So, it could be you punching someone, you getting punched, something that happened at a speech show, or just a show you're attending. Jem, I think the last, you get to share your second, but the last one you shared was the I'm blanking on the band.
I think I talked about the others. I think.
Yes, yeah, with all the silly string and that. So that one's off the table.
That's a good one.
But okay. Yeah. Josh, favorite mosh story?
Off the top of my head, I think I've told this story before on our podcast, but I'll tell it again. I probably would have been about 17, 18 years old. And it was like one of the first shows that my band played outside of Sydney.
Okay.
We got a support slot for this band called Carpathian, who were a massive Australian band. They're on Death Wish, like they were a huge band. And it was they just dropped a record and they were doing a tour for it, and they put us on a show in Newcastle, which is like 2 hours north of Sydney. It's like sort of the next sort of big town after Sydney.
Sure.
And it was like it's got a bit of a reputation for being kind of a rough town. Like it's a working class, like steel mining town, basically.
Oh, okay.
And so the venues can get a little bit rowdy. I mean, the hardcore scene is really awesome there, but when you add other people into the mix, it can get a little bit full on sometimes.
Sure.
Especially back then. Anyway, so we were playing. I think we were like second or third band on the bill, and it was pretty early. And it was a big room, like big barrier in front of us, and like super young, 17, 18 years old. And halfway through the set, we were doing a Cro-Mags cover. And this dude, who I don't know how he was there, I don't think he was there for the show. He climbed over the barrier and onto the stage and started trying to take the mic off me.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't really know
like he knew the words, or he was just acting.
Well, that's what I thought. So I gave it to him, and then he just started yelling in the microphone, like not the lyrics. And then he kind of tripped over and just sort of like lay in the middle of the stage for a bit, still just yelling in the microphone. So I took it back off him, and he eventually picks himself up and he goes and jumps off the stage, doesn't clear the barrier. So he's doubled over the barrier with his ass like facing up at me, and his pants fell down as well. And
so he's just ass up in the middle of this Cro-Mags cover.
Yeah. And like it took him like several moments to collect himself. Like it took him a long time to kind of get himself over the barrier. He was really drunk. I don't know if I mentioned that, but he was obviously really fucked up.
If that wasn't a given.
Yeah. Anyway, so he climbs over and then he gets up and just immediately starts moshing as hard as he can with his pants still around his ankles.
Oh, no.
As I said, it's a big room. Wasn't that full at that point because, we're like one of the opening bands. And so he moshes from the barrier to the back of the room with his pants around his ankles the whole time. And waiting at the back of the room is a couple of security guards who just immediately grabbed him and took him out of the room. But it was fucked up.
I just imagine him throwing arms, moving backwards, and everyone's like, I'm not avoiding you because of the arms. It's because your ass is just at the floor.
Yeah, he was super sloppy. And it was like one of the first 18 plus shows we'd ever played.
Oh, interesting.
So it was like really eye-opening.
You're like, it's like this. Okay.
Yeah. So that was pretty funny.
That's a good story. So no,
I'll never forget it, dude. Every time I listen to the Cro-Mags now, I always think of that.
Oh, it's like ingrained in your mind.
Yeah. It's fucked.
Do you think it's made the Chromatic song better or worse based off of that experience?
I mean,
like, do you skip it when when it's on shuffle or something?
Like, maybe a little bit, but it's also got to do with the fact that we probably covered that song like 100 times at one point. Like, we played it so much. We just never wrote music.
I got you.
It was the same shit over and over again. So it got a little bit long in the tooth, but it's probably our fault more than the Pantless Mosher.
Yeah, so no PTSD or anything when that song.
No, I mean, it's a funny story, and it's like for my friends in Newcastle that were there, like we always talk about it.
Right. All right, Jem. High bar set, so I hope you got something.
I'm gonna talk about Josh because Josh, when we were all growing up, we were moshing so much. We would just always be moshing. And then for a few years, Josh slowed down a bit on the moshing. And
I got old.
And then I remember the first time we went to Europe, I went with another band, and Josh came as well. Josh came on that tour. First time ever in Europe, loving it. Best time ever. We played this festival in Germany, in Karlsruhe, with Guns Up. Guns Up were touring as well for some reason. And Josh was like, I can't. It
was the only real hardcore band that you guys were gonna play with on the tour.
Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't like a full-on like hardcore tour.
Right.
Anyways, so they played, and we were in some it was like some multi-venue that was, it seemed like it was like an outdoor space, but it seemed like it was, I don't know, maybe it had like some agriculture there, like some horses or something, or I'm not really sure, but it was like,
I thought it felt more industrial.
Yeah, I'm getting the two, I guess. But essentially, it was like a festival, and there was obviously just free piss, and just seeing Josh moshing to Guns Up to Outlive was very, very fucking funny. In Germany, it just
Hey, to put it in context, it was 2015.
Oh, okay.
So it's not like this is like Guns Up are broken up.
Right.
There was that reunion tour. It was like their reunion. So it was like, we hadn't, that
was
band
that we haven't listened to since like 2008.
8 years past there.
Sick band.
Last time we, yeah. So that was funny. But then that was the last time I saw Josh mosh. That was the last time. And then when we're doing the pod again in the last year, it's something that we our friends are like, yeah, Josh hasn't moshed in ages. Josh hasn't moshed in ages. Been playing bands, but he hasn't moshed in ages.
Mm.
And when we're doing the pod again, it was coming up to like, I don't know, maybe end of last year. And I remember Josh and I were just chilling, and he talks to me. He's like, "No, I've decided I'm gonna mosh again. Just come back. I'm moshing again, bro. I'm moshing again." I'm like, "Fucking hell, man! Josh is gonna hit the pit. Josh is getting on. Let's go." And then Speed, we did a first show after COVID. It was in June this year. It's the only show we played in the last year and a half. And halfway through our set, we had our best friends Primitive Blast. They did a secret set in the middle of our set. And
wait, in the middle of your set. So they played a set, and then you grabbed the guitars and instruments.
Yeah. So we played our set.
That's cool. Sometimes
so
it's just at the tail end. So they just play a band will play the last, 5 minutes or whatever. But I like that in the middle. That's cool.
Yeah, they came in the middle, and they like used our gear and whatever. And as soon as Josh took his fucking guitar, he just took his shirt off. And it was just pitting, no shit. Stands down, just pitting back and forth, and there's photos of it. And like the next day, we were just posting about it. It was funny, bro. It was funny. So just everyone's got a friend. You know what I'm describing.
Totally. Everyone's got their friend that's like, oh yeah, I don't do that anymore. And then you look and you're like,
yeah. So it was just that kind of moment, bro. And especially for Josh, just see that happen.
I'm just so unfit, and like the second I do anything, I just feel it for like a week after.
Right.
Now, you got mad style now, but this is the thing is like, because you do heaps of bodyboarding. He's been bodyboarding heaps for the last 2 years.
Okay.
So when all your dives and everything, it looks like you're on the waves, bro. When you're there, it's really sick. It's really sick.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's almost like
I had to do it right.
Josh has like
for so long. So.
Josh has like a doomsday, or in the like this many days since the Wi-Fi password was asked. It's like this video
to zero, man.
You're like, it's been a long time. You click the reset button, just.
It's a new era now, yeah. But
yeah.
No, it's cool. And I think this kind of experience, though, as funny as it is, it'll keep happening. Everybody in Sydney is going to be moshing, man. Like we're gonna when these shows come back, when they're starting up again from December this month, upcoming, and it's going to be. I'm so psyched to go back to the shows because they're just going to be crazy. But part of that is because there's going to be so many people that are going to come out of the woodwork, and I know they're all going to be hitting the pit because there's just a different energy. You know what I mean? So it's going to be so scary, but so funny and so awesome and just great energy. So
I think I just want to jump really quickly back to the Primitive Blast, playing in the middle of your set. It's almost like Speed will be back after these messages, and then Primitive Blast plays, and then you guys finish off. So I just wanted to hit on that again. If anyone's listening, like, hey, maybe if you're doing a surprise set, do it in the middle versus at the very, very end or anything like that. So I've never heard of that before. That's very cool.
There's a video of it.
Okay.
Like the set is there's a full set. So if you search up, I don't know, Speed Burdekin Hotel Sydney or something, it'll come up. But
we had to put them on there because they also put a record out last year.
Very
it came out on Triple B as well. Massive thing for Australia. And obviously being another Sydney band, our best friends. I mean, their drummer is our drummer's brother.
Oh, okay.
So like they're very close to us. It just feels like a no-brainer that we're going to play heaps of shows together, but we're trying to like keep it a little bit separate because they need to be sort of their own things, but we had to have Primitive Blast play
right
in the middle of our shit just because we wanted to see it, and I think the rest of Sydney is.
It's fucking awesome. And I mean, here, like, Primitive Blast is legendary, like everywhere. Like, Primitive Blast is legend. It's not even in the sense of the word as being like past their time or anything like that. Not at all. I mean, they're legends. Like
they're legendary by your definition. They're inspirational. Every fucking band sounds like Primitive Blast now, which is incredible.
They're fucking amazingly awesome. So
yeah.
And we're doing another show in December. There's going to be another secret set.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. In the middle again, or you're gonna 2 quarters? Yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah, just jump in.
I guess 2 quarters is half.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I meant
2 quarters in. There'll be a secret set.
I think we'll put it 4/8 into
the 4/8. Well, guys, this has been a super, super great conversation. Like, I'm super happy to have Jim back on the show, but it was like super crucial to have Josh as well, and build up some rapport there. And I'm a big fan of you guys. I'll just say, like, I'm a big fan of you guys and who you are and what you do outside of, like, I like your band or the podcast, like, because behind both of those things is people that are writing the music and, recording the conversations. And I think what you guys are doing for Australian hardcore as a whole is, like, really, really inspiring to me. I'm just super grateful to, spend a little bit of time with you guys. All of your guys' links and band stuff and socials would be in the description of the video and in the show notes. But if there's any plugs, shout outs, or anything you want to end the people off on, the floor is yours.
If you're discovering Australian hardcore, you want to know more about it, go to Last Ride Records. Check out the on Spotify. There's a playlist called Australian Hardcore.
Yep.
And I think it's a black and white photo of Mindsnare on the cover, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But that's all. We've also got links to that in our Forge Ahead link tree on our Instagram at Forge Ahead Podcast. Go check out that playlist. It's a great place to start for Australian hardcore.
Yeah,
there's so much awesome shit that you probably discover that you just probably never heard of.
It's got all the new shit, but all the old shit as well, because the old shit is really important when it comes to Australia.
And by the way, this is not Last Ride Records only bands. This is all Australian hardcore bands from the era from the generation. Sorry, and so just go suss that. And hopefully we can see everybody, including yourself, sooner than later. Hopefully the world will allow at some point.
Yes, COVID allowing, if Speed doesn't already have plans as far as coming over to North America as a whole, I will be, I will be upset, because I'm sure that I speak for a lot of people where if there's any international bands that, North American hardcore as a whole are are wanting to come over here, I think speed is top of the list. So I hope that that's kerning in the background. And thank you guys again for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
It will be a dream, but I know it'll happen. We'll definitely be linking in person. It will be a big hug, bro.
Just a group hug of a bunch of legends all at once.
Yeah, it'll be good. Thank you so much, Spence. Thank you again, bro. You're a legend.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.